Give me the maid or the city burns. That was the rival boss's fatal mistake. When Viktor Krovik offered peace in exchange for the girl who scrubbed Varley's floors, Lucian didn't negotiate. He shattered his own study in a blind rage, walked straight into a suicidal ambush with only 4 men, and took a knife to the chest just to put a bullet in the man who dared to trade her like property. The camera pans through a torrential Manhattan downpour, the kind trying to scrub the city's dark conscience clean. For 14 months, Emma survived by being a ghost, quietly washing away the sins of a ruthless syndicate. But tonight, the shadows catch up. 3 figures blockade a suffocating alley. They do not want her purse. They want her pain as a bloody message. As the first blow shatters her jaw, her mind flashes to her brother, Caleb. Yet fate authors a twisted irony. Instead of bleeding out in the mud, she awakens beneath blinding crystal chandeliers, locking stairs with New York's deadliest kingpin. You and I must look closely at this tragedy, for it reveals a haunting truth. The most dangerous place to stand is never in the shadows, but directly beneath the spotlight. The frame cuts to earlier that evening. A grandfather clock tolls 11 times, its hollow chime reverberating through the vast corridors. Emma leans into a heavy industrial mop, her small frame trembling. Her joints burn, her hands cracked red from chemicals. She's 6 hours into a punishing shift. In a house built on blood, her survival mechanism is total erasure. The camera watches her scrub crimson stains. She knows better than to question. Above all, she never casts her eyes toward the architect of this nightmare, Lucian Varley. It is a name that drops like a loaded gun. The tragic irony of her life holds a deep lesson. We believe keeping our heads down keeps us safe. But silencing your own voice only invites monsters to write your story. In the dim lighting, she had seen the boss exactly 11 times before tonight, always lingering in the blurred periphery, watching his tailored silhouette slice through the air with the precision of a blade. He carried a suffocating aura that made killers forget to breathe. Suddenly, Clara, the head housekeeper, steps into the frame. Clara is the sole flicker of warmth in this sprawling mausoleum, the only soul who speaks Emma's real name. She gently urges the girl to go home, but Emma merely nods toward a fresh, dark stain. Extra hours yield extra wages, which buy another physical therapy session for Caleb. This is the quiet tragedy of genuine devotion. True sacrifice never demands an audience. It simply swallows the exhaustion and finishes the brutal work for the ones we love most. Clara drops her mask, her eyes heavy with concern as she warns of the rising storm. The camera follows Emma as she stows her supplies, pulls up the collar of her threadbare coat, and slips into the bitter October night. The wind violently bites at her skin, carrying the sharp scent of impending chaos. She only has 4 blocks to the subway. Because these slick streets sit deep inside Varley territory, they are considered the safest in the city. Emma has walked this risk route hundreds of times, but tonight, the framing feels dangerously off. Flickering lamps cast long, distorted shadows against the brick. A chilling instinct flares at the base of her neck. It is a vital reminder to honor your intuition. When your inner voice screams that the dark is breathing, you must listen. She forces her exhausted legs faster as rain slaps the concrete. The audio tightens to highlight one sound. Heavy, deliberate footsteps splashing just behind her. Her chest constricts with a suffocating panic. She takes a sharp left into a narrow alley, hoping to break the pursuit, but the footsteps turn with her. The warm glow of the subway mocks her from just ahead. Suddenly, a broad figure steps from a pitch-black alcove, severing her escape. His posture is relaxed, yet entirely predatory. He stares her down and casually asks if she belongs to the Vali family. True fear is a paralyzing venom. Instead of bolting, her limbs turn to stone. It proves a terrifying truth about human nature. All our carefully built logic simply evaporates the second terror steps into the frame. The camera pushes in close. She desperately tries to project calm, forcing a fragile voice as she denies knowing the syndicate. That illusion shatters when a cruel sneer echoes behind her. Emma spins around as two figures detach from the darkness. They had stalked her from the estate. The sky unzips, unleashing blinding sheets of rain. She begs, crying out that she is nobody, just a cleaner. The leader steps forward, revealing a jagged scar across his brow. He smiles with cold malice, explaining that her innocence makes her the perfect canvas for their message. It is a tragic reality. When caught in the crossfire of monsters, innocence is never a shield. She lunges for the street, but a brutal hand seizes her coat, violently throwing her into the black belly of the alley. The lens captures the sheer brutality. Before a scream leaves her throat, a fist connects with her jaw. A blinding flash of pain erupts, followed by the metallic taste of blood. The scarred man mutters a hollow justification, drowned out by the ringing in her ears. A second strike buries into her ribs with a sickening crack. Emma collapses. She curls up, but heavy boots drive into her spine. Every breath becomes a gasp of fire. Yet, in this crucible of suffering, one anchor holds her to the world. Caleb. If she perishes, her brother falls too. This reveals the profound power of love. True purpose gives you the impossible strength to push upward, even as your bones splinter. She fights the agony to rise, but a devastating kick catches her, driving her face into the freezing mud. The violence halts when the leader barks a command. Their cruelty requires her heart to keep beating. A corpse cannot deliver a message to the King of New York. The thugs melt into the rain. Emma is left bleeding on the asphalt, her vision turning black. Her final sensation is the rumble of the subway beneath her. A normal life she will never board. The screen cuts to black. Later, a piercing brightness pries her eyelids apart. She recoils, her body feeling like shattered glass. A calm voice instructs her to remain still, listing off broken ribs and a concussion. She forces her eyes to adjust. The gutter is gone. Above her hang opulent crystal chandeliers. It is a stunning reminder. Sometimes, surviving a brutal storm only places you directly inside the eye of a much deadlier hurricane. Through the haze of her concussion, the camera focuses on an older man by her bed. His eyes carry the weary weight of someone who patches up syndicate soldiers. Emma attempts to speak, but her throat feels like ash. He offers water before clinically dismantling her reality. She is locked inside the fortress of Lucien Valley. Stick with me here, because this is where the dynamics of power shift entirely. Ignoring the agonizing protest of her ribs, Emma throws off the covers, desperate to reach Caleb. Before the physician can restrain her, an imposing shadow eclipses the doorway. An unyielding voice slices through the room, stating that her brother is already there. True power does not merely lock you inside a cage. It effortlessly brings everything you love into the cage right alongside you. The camera tilts up. Picture a presence so commanding it alters the air pressure. Lucien Valley stands in the doorway, projecting terrifying sovereignty. Dressed in a flawless suit, his features seem chiseled from ice. As his eyes lock onto hers, dread paralyzes her lungs. In a flat, emotionless voice, he recites the intimate details of her life. He names Caleb, knowing he is paralyzed. The violation of her privacy is staggering. Her voice trembles, asking how he knows this. He glides forward like an apex predator, explaining he oversees every atom in his domain. He admits he knew she scrubbed his floors for a year, yet never learned her name. It is a harsh truth about the elite. They only see you when you become a liability. Gathering the last shred of her courage, she answers, "Emma Vale." The lens lingers on his face as he repeats her name, testing the syllables. He dismantles her privacy, listing her $118,000 in medical debt and 3 grueling jobs. Every statistic lands like a physical blow. She tries to look away, but his gaze pins her down. Lucien calmly reveals Caleb is resting in the East Wing, receiving care from a private nurse. Emma is blindsided, demanding his motives. His expression hardens. He explains that being assaulted on his territory while on his payroll makes her his absolute property. He views the attack as a personal failure, and this rescue is his correction. Notice how toxic control operates. Men like Lucien never offer a genuine apology. They simply rewrite reality to fit their egos. A sharp look from him silences the doctor instantly. The camera pushes in on Lucien. He does not blink. In a voice like polished marble, he reveals the thugs belong to Victor Kravik, a rival boss igniting a turf war. They used her broken body as a telegram. Emma pleads, swearing she is just a ghost who mops floors. But to a kingpin, her innocence is irrelevant. He dictates that anyone in his domain falls under his absolute protection. The men are already facing a gruesome reckoning, and you and I know exactly what kind of brutal theater that entails. Terrified, she begs to be left out of this mafia war, wanting only to return to her quiet life. Lucien cuts her off with finality. Her desires no longer matter. The lesson is grim. Once the shadows claim you, your illusion of free will vanishes entirely. She is officially a pawn on his board. You and I must recognize the exact moment a gilded trap snaps shut. The camera lingers on Lucien. The lighting is cold, casting sharp shadows across his jaw as he drops the devastation. He paid her rent, medical bills, and her brother's care. Handled, Emma's trembling hands grip the table. She is frantic, instinctively refusing his money. But he steps into the light, his posture rigid. The deal is finalized. He claims he is correcting his failure, and her old life is officially dead. She must accept this protection or become a casualty. She calls it captivity, tears brimming in her weary eyes. But here is a simple life lesson. Sometimes, the people who pull you from a blazing fire are merely placing you inside a much shinier cage. He does not care what she calls it, as long as she stays. The room goes dead silent as Lucien lowers his voice to a dangerous rumble. Emma sits under the dim light, her fractured ribs aching with every shallow breath. She spits pure fire, demanding this crime boss understand he does not own her. The camera catches a terrifying flash in his dark eyes. He steps close, freely admitting he does not own her, but he is entirely responsible for her now. He steps out, the heavy door shutting behind him with the finality of a prison cell. Emma sinks down, realizing her quiet reality is traded for a beautifully decorated nightmare. The life lesson here is harsh but true. Fighting a rip current only ensures you drown faster. Hours later, Emma jolts awake to pitch blackness and the horrifying, raw sound of someone screaming. It takes 3 agonizing seconds for Emma to realize the terrible noise is tearing from her own throat. She shoots upright, ribs screaming in protest, but strong hands instantly pin her trembling shoulders down. A shadowed nurse tells her to breathe, stopping her from ripping out the medical lines. Emma hyperventilates in the gloom, begging to know where Caleb is. The nurse calmly mentions the boy is safely asleep on the 3rd floor, exactly as the boss commanded. Emma demands to see him, forcing the nurse to shift her battered frame into a wheelchair. It is a harsh picture of sheer helplessness, yet here is a solid life lesson. Sometimes knowing when to let someone else push the wheels is the only way you survive. They glide down a silent cold corridor toward room 7. Let us look at this piece by piece, shall we? The camera pans to the singular anchor keeping Emma from losing her sanity. Caleb rests in a high-tech bed, the soft blue light of monitors pulsing in the dark. Emma rolls up, gripping his small hand as if dangling over a fatal drop. Caleb opens his eyes, scans her battered face, and bluntly tells her she looks like garbage. She offers a broken smile, asking if the men hurt him. He shakes his head. Two Chuizin's suits simply scooped him up. His voice shatters when he admits he thought she had died. Emma smooths his hair, her hand shaking, as she says they survived. Life teaches us that the strongest bonds are always forged in the worst conditions. Caleb then wipes his eyes, amazed by the luxury and eating warm meals off fancy china. Caleb shifts against the white pillows, asking who this mysterious benefactor really is. Emma looks away, her jaw tight as she admits the man is dangerous. Caleb cannot figure out why a criminal boss cares, and she has no answer. Then Caleb drops a massive bombshell. He reveals Lucian paid off every single cent of her debt. The camera pushes in as Emma freezes. 6 figures of crushing weight, wiped clean, yet she is furious, swearing they do not take dirty charity. Caleb snaps back, his young face hardened by the streets, telling her this is survival. That kid makes a profound point. The real-life lesson here is that foolish pride will never keep your lungs drawing breath. Emma knows the grim reality of the underworld. Every gift from a man like Lucian is a calculated trap. They simply do not know the terrible price tag yet. Caleb begs her to deal with the fallout when the bill finally comes due. Right now, he has a soft bed, and she is not bleeding out in a dirty alley. Emma desperately wants to list every tragic way this Mafia favor will explode in their faces, but heavy exhaustion drags her down. Over the next 3 days, the scene blurs into a haze of painkillers. Her cracked ribs feel like shifting shards of glass, but here is a beautiful life lesson hidden inside the trauma. Sometimes you simply have to endure the dark storm so the people you love can stay dry. Caleb is finally eating warm meals, his rare laughter echoing down the halls. Watching her little brother genuinely thrive makes this impending bargain with the devil feel like a trade she would gladly sign in blood. You might be wondering the same thing I did about this isolation. Sometimes the crushing silence inside a mansion is far more terrifying than the violent chaos of the streets. Emma does not see the boss for days. Clara pops in with gossip, and a nurse changes her bandages. But Lucian remains a ghost. Then day 4 arrives. Clara stands over her bed with a grim face, announcing Mr. Vari wants her immediately. It is not a request. Sliding into a dress feels like a slow march toward an execution. Emma wanders past the polished floors she once scrubbed on her knees. Life teaches us that our biggest upgrades often come wrapped in our deepest fears. They stop at a massive wooden door. One single knock. Lucian's heavy voice bleeds through the thick oak, commanding them to enter. The camera frames a study dripping with insane wealth. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and chairs costing more than Emma earns in a lifetime. Lucian stands by the window, not turning when he orders her to sit. Her bruised ribs scream as she sinks into the dark leather. He calmly notes that she is healing and Caleb is thriving. Emma swallows her pride, forcing out a thank you, but the words taste like poison. Lucian spins around. His face is carved from cold stone, but his eyes are blazing. He warns her never to thank him again. He leans over his desk, the ruthless predator barely hidden beneath the suit. A harsh life lesson is that favors from the dark are never truly wiped clean. He casually mentions he found the 3 guys who attacked her, and they were very eager to talk. Emma blurts out, asking exactly what he did to them. Lucian offers a hollow stare and simply says he did what was necessary. He coldly explains a rival named Krovic sent those goons to test his iron grip on the city. Emma flares up, accusing him of using her brutal trauma to protect his reputation. But Lucian locks eyes with hers, stating that any public sign of weakness will burn his empire to ash. Emma grips her chair, insisting she is not part of his staff. Lucian shuts that delusion down. She is locked into his violent world now. The ultimate life lesson is that begging a monster for safety often traps you inside a prettier cage. Krovic knows her name. He knows Caleb. If Emma leaves, she dies. To Lucian, keeping her protected and keeping her locked away are the exact same thing. Stick with me here, because we are watching a breathtaking, emotional standoff. The camera holds on Emma as she stares down this kingpin, white-knuckling her last shred of dignity. He tells her the anger is good because it keeps her sharp. Honestly, she is terrified. She yells about how she bled for years to build her independence, and he deleted her entire life in 4 days. Lucian does not blink, claiming he gave her safety. Emma bitterly calls it a prison. Lucian leans in, reminding her it is a prison that keeps her heart beating. She desperately wants to run, but knows Caleb is finally safe behind these fortified walls. It is a harsh truth, but sometimes the very things that trap us are the only things keeping us alive. Love really is the ultimate cage. And just like that, the invisible door of her cage clicks shut. She asks how long she must stay, and the room falls into total silence. It is that suffocating quiet right before a storm. Lucian admits she is stuck until he destroys Krovic. Emma is crying now, telling him straight to his face that she hates him. But consider this lesson. Sometimes pure hate is the only sturdy bridge holding 2 broken people together. Lucian coldly agrees, noting at least she will be alive to hate him. Suddenly, an enforcer with a jagged scar busts through the doors. Absolute chaos. He announces Krovic hijacked a shipment, dropped all 6 guys, and stole $500,000. The study instantly turns freezing cold. Lucian asks when. The enforcer drops the bomb. 20 minutes ago, and he left a message. The scarred enforcer is sweating, terrified to speak. Lucian clenches his fists until his knuckles turn white, demanding the message. The goon stammers that Krovic warned Emma was just the beginning. Lucian must choose between his syndicate and his pet. Emma sits completely frozen. For 3 agonizing seconds, Lucian stops breathing. You know, a person's true nature always reveals itself when pushed to the edge. Lucian snaps. He hurls a crystal paperweight into the wall. It shatters with the loud crack of a gunshot. He screams at the man to get out, losing all his icy composure. Emma tries to slip away, but he barks her name. His back remains turned, his shoulders shaking with pure rage. He whispers that this nightmare only ends when one of them is dead. Emma runs down the hall until her legs finally give out. The camera finds Emma sliding down the silk wallpaper, breath-catching as her bruised ribs scream. You and I know the crushing weight of carrying guilt that never belonged to us. 6 lives were extinguished because thugs backed her into an alley. Now, an empire fractures over a girl who used to scrub floors. Lucian orchestrates a bloodbath just to shield her. Marcus eventually finds her trembling frame and carries her to bed, but sleep never comes. She stares into the dark, haunted by the coldness in Lucian's eyes. Miles away, Krovic drinks to a hollow victory, while Lucian quietly sharpens his blades. Emma barricades herself in that silent room for 2 full days. It is a quiet tragedy. Sometimes, retreating into the shadows is the only way a fragile mind can survive the incoming storm. Sunlight barely pierces the curtains on the 3rd day of this quiet nightmare. Caleb pushes his wheelchair into her sanctuary, his harsh words about her pale face, masking a brother's deep terror. Emma sits hollowed out, her blank gaze fixed on the city skyline. When he demands the truth, her emotional dam shatters. She weeps under the phantom weight of 6 dead men, convinced her heartbeat is a curse. But Caleb grabs her trembling hands, anchoring her to the floor. He reminds her those men died because they tested an apex predator. We must hold onto this truth together. Surviving a hurricane does not mean you succumb the winds. The deepest lesson we can learn is to release the guilt of the chaos we cannot control and let the monsters tear each other apart in the dark. The camera lingers on Emma, drowning in a silent ocean of guilt. She thinks isolation is a shield, but Caleb urges her to do the brutal work of healing. She desperately wants to cling to his logic. Yet, every time she blinks, she sees Lucian promising absolute destruction. Voice cracking, she begs her brother to flee. Caleb dismantles his fantasies with precision. Flee back to a decaying apartment? Back to fracturing her ribs to pay for heat. He forces her to face the fatal flaw of their pride. Walking away now is an invitation to their own funeral. The quiet lesson in his defiance is profound. True resilience is not standing alone in the cold. Sometimes, true courage is allowing someone with a much larger shield to step between you and the fire. Dust motes dance in the light as Emma lingers by the glass. She tries to resurrect the fierce protective rage that kept her alive after her mother died. But that fire is now just grey ash, leaving a hollow ache in her chest. Desperate for motion to quiet her spinning mind, she drifts into the cavernous belly of the manor. A harsh glare bleeds from a cracked basement door. Every survival instinct screams at her to run, yet she freezes. Inside the concrete walls, Lucian systematically destroys a heavy bag. Each strike is a terrifying rhythm of mechanical violence. It is a sobering reflection of our shared human nature. We often wander blindly searching for our lost spark, only to stand mesmerized by a wild flame that could easily reduce our entire world to cinders. The dim light catches a jagged bullet scar on his shoulder, a permanent flight from a life soaked in blood. He moves with the terrifying, fluid grace of a wolf. Suddenly, the heavy bag stops swinging. His dark gaze snaps to the doorway, pinning her in the shadows. The silence floods the concrete room thick enough to choke on. He advances with slow, measured steps, and Emma remains rooted to the floor. He stops mere inches away, the air radiating a dangerous blend of sharp cedar and raw adrenaline. He growls a low warning about her wandering in his home. You and I know the profound truth hidden in this moment. We rarely wander blindly through life. We subconsciously navigate the dark until we stand exactly where our deepest, unspoken desires demand we go. Clutching her aching ribs, Emma notes her talent for trespassing in dangerous territory. A ghost of amusement softens his harsh features. Prodding an underworld king is madness, but defiance anchors her feet to the floor. He asks about her recovery, and she answers plainly, offering an update on Caleb. Lucian receives this with a weighted nod. The unsaid words between them create a suffocating pressure. She shatters the quiet, asking about the blood being spilled in her name. His face instantly calcifies into cold stone, demanding she ignore the street rumors. It takes immense courage to ask if you are the spark of a tragedy. The lesson here is profound. It takes even greater wisdom to bravely accept a terrifying truth without turning away from the mirror. The lighting shifts as Lucian steps forward, his shadow engulfing her fragile frame. He dismisses his rival as a fraudulent king, weaponizing her existence to justify the coming slaughter. When she challenges his methods, he retreats behind the cold armor of a boss, commanding her to leave. This dismissal sparks a dormant fire within Emma. She steps into his dangerous gravity. How can she ignore a war where men bleed simply because she breathes? Lucian pivots, radiating lethality, asking if she truly wants to witness the grotesque mechanics of his vengeance. Let's examine this together. Clinging to ignorance may offer a brief sanctuary, but running from reality guarantees a far more devastating wound than facing the darkest truths head-on. The camera pushes into a tight close-up. He eliminates the final inches, forcing Emma to tilt her chin to meet his piercing gaze. He completely rejects the idea that she is a pawn. Her voice drops to a whisper, begging him to let her take Caleb and disappear. His hands curl into iron fists as he delivers a grim prophecy. Fleeing will never sever the thread tying her to his name. She fires back, asking if she is just another possession in his gilded cage. Instantly, the terrifying boss facade shatters. He whispers that control is the furthest thing from his mind. His sole obsession is her survival. The tragic lesson is that we often confuse safety with captivity, forgetting that the strongest cages in life are forged from a desperate, terrifying kind of care. The tension is thick enough to cut. Emma reaches her breaking point, demanding to know why a ruthless syndicate boss would anchor his life to a maid. Slowly, the invincible Lucian cracks. He tries to hide behind the logistics of duty, but her emotion shatters his defenses. The stress fractures his composure until he actually begs her to retreat. Hearing a desperate plea from a street king reveals his complete undoing. She spends the night wrestling with his confession, haunted by the apocalyptic devotion in his eyes. Hours later, the manor's quiet is shattered. Emma slips into the dark corridor as angry voices declare the tree dead. War has arrived. The brutal truth of life is this: when a terrifying force of nature looks at you as his sole weakness, it is inevitably because you already are. Stick with me as we unpack this terrifying sequence. In the dead of night, Emma is paralyzed in the corridor. Behind the heavy doors, an elder proposes a transactional sacrifice to halt the slaughter. The currency surrendering Emma. Lucian responds with a glacial threat, daring the man to finish his sentence. The negotiation ends instantly with the catastrophic sound of splintering wood. Lucian expels the men, his voice vibrating with untethered wrath. 3 seasoned enforcers flee into the hall, faces painted with terror. Another violent crash echoes from within the sanctum. Reason dictates that Emma should vanish into the shadows. Yet, the profound lesson is this: the hardest wisdom we acquire is knowing when to seek shelter and when we must boldly walk directly into the violent center of a storm. Instead of retreating, Emma reclaims her power and knocks on the splintered wood. Lucian roars a savage command to stay out, but his viciousness evaporates the moment he sees her. The study is a portrait of devastation. Furniture is reduced to kindling. Lucian stands by the window, fresh blood weeping from his knuckles. She asks flatly if he intends to trade her. He tracks her like a wounded beast, closing the distance as he vows never to commodify her. Emma meets his intensity with a piercing reality check. She is not an object to be possessed. The desperate panic in his eyes halts him entirely. This reveals a tragic paradox of the human heart. We constantly attempt to cage the very things we are most terrified of losing. forgetting that a living soul can never truly be owned. The emotional undercurrents in this room are staggering. Lucian is painfully aware of how she recoils from his shadow, treating him as a wealthy warden. Stripped of his terrifying armor, he delivers a confession that shifts the earth. His vast empire is utterly meaningless if it cannot shield her. When Emma argues they are strangers, he dismantles the lie. He has studied the fierce dignity in how she breaks her body to sustain her brother. His trembling, bloodied fists expose his immense guilt for pulling her into his dark orbit. Asked why he cares, his answer is absolute. He would reduce the city to ash before letting anyone harm her. It is a terrifying, beautiful revelation when a total stranger becomes the only pillar keeping your fractured world from complete collapse. The camera pans across the ruined study, cloaked in heavy shadows and the scent of fresh blood. Every survival instinct Emma possesses screams at her to run from this underworld king. Yet, she plants her feet. Watch her trembling fingers reach out, wrapping around the soaked wrist of a man who commands absolute terror. She cuts right through his dark bravado. Her voice a fragile command demanding bandages. She sweeps aside the shattered crystal of his rage, ordering the city's most lethal force to sit down. Astonishingly, the Titan obeys. She steps closer, pressing burning alcohol to his torn flesh. He takes the fire without a single flinch. Let us pause to understand this truth. In the darkest corners of a broken life, real healing only begins when we offer fierce empathy to the very monster we were taught to fear. The room feels suffocatingly intimate as Lucian sits in absolute silence. His dark gaze tracks her movements, making her hands shake. His voice is a low rumble, reminding her she owes him nothing, that she remains his captive. But as she tightens the bandage, Emma shatters the lie. She looks up, her voice steadying as she confesses he is not her captor, but the singular reason she is still breathing. The heavy ear freezes. A violent fracture of terrified hope cracks through the ruthless leader's marble expression. He whispers, asking if there is even a difference anymore. Emma holds his torn hand, confessing she is still figuring that out. Slowly, his scarred fingers rise to brush her jawline. It is a quiet tragedy how we construct towering walls to keep out the pain, entirely blind to the fact that we are starving the people desperately trying to love us. His touch carries a heartbreaking gentleness. He murmurs that she has every right to despise him. Her breath hitches as she confesses she is trying her hardest to do exactly that. Neither pulls away. Then, the brutal sound of heavy boots hammers against the floorboards, shattering the spell. Emma jolts backward as the lead enforcer shoves the door open. Instantly, the vulnerable man vanishes, replaced by the freezing mask of the syndicate boss. The news he brings is a waking nightmare. A rival family just slaughtered 8 soldiers and leveled a local cafe, spilling innocent blood merely to force a meeting. Emma feels her stomach twist into nauseating knots. This is the grim reality of their dark world. The innocent will forever pay the heaviest tax in blood whenever powerful men decide to play their violent games of pride. Lucian's spine turns to absolute steel. When his voice finally slices through the tension, it rings with the weight of destruction. He orders the meeting for midnight, waving away warnings of an obvious ambush. The last trace of warmth bleeds from his dark eyes. Emma stands paralyzed, watching the wounded man she just tended morph into an unsheathed weapon. Gripped by panic, she demands to know what happens if he dies tonight. He does not flinch. His voice goes dead as he lists the cash, the safe house, and the armed guards assigned to protect her and young Caleb. She fires back that his bloody money means nothing, but his lifeless expressions silences her. He merely commands her to lock the door. It is a profound tragedy when a broken man measures his entire human worth solely by the security he can purchase for the souls he quietly loves. You and I must examine the horror of his parting words. Lucian invades her space, delivering instructions pulled from a nightmare. His tone is ragged as he orders her to fight viciously if soldiers breach the estate. He begs her, stripping away his pride, to do whatever is necessary to survive. She wants to scream, but the hollow desperation in his eyes forces her to swallow her panic. She whispers a shaking vow. The second the heavy door clicks shut, her knees buckle against the floorboards. The hours that follow are an agonizing mental torture. She huddles in the dark with Caleb, forcing a brave smile while armed men barricade the mansion. We often assume the worst part of war is the bloodshed. In truth, the absolute deepest agony is the suffocating silence, sitting powerless in the shadows, waiting for the violence to kick down your door. The fragile silence fractures. Past 6 in the evening. Caleb sits with his small shoulders trembling, feeling the suffocating doom settle over the fortified mansion. Even the hardened enforcers are dripping with sweat. A horrifying omen. When her brother asks where the boss has gone, Emma spins a fragile lie. She claims Lucian left to protect the neighborhood. She buries the agonizing truth. He is marching into a bloody trap solely to ensure she keeps breathing. Caleb's voice is heartbreakingly small as he asks if the dark man is ever coming back. Emma grips his tiny hand until her knuckles turn white. She admits she does not know, swearing they will survive even as her stomach turns. True courage is rarely about a fearless heart. Often, it is simply projecting a calm certainty to shield the innocent, while your own soul hangs by a fraying thread. Notice the frantic energy as Emma paces her bedroom, flinching at every creak of the floorboards. She desperately tries to convince herself that he is just a ruthless criminal who ruined her simple life. Yet the heavy ache in her chest betrays the lie. Minutes before midnight, she drifts to the grand foyer just as Lucian descends the staircase. He is draped entirely in black, radiating the freezing aura of the Grim Reaper himself. His voice is absolute ice as he orders her to remain hidden. Fighting her shaking breaths, she asks if he is taking his army. He shakes his head. Just 4 soldiers. It is a terrifying, quiet display of power, kept small to delay a massacre. He steps closer, locking his dark eyes onto hers. The rational mind will invent 1,000 logical excuses to run from a burning building, but a deeply invested heart will always anchor your feet to the flames. Picture the contrast of this scene with me. The king of the underworld stands in his dimly lit hallway, speaking with chilling calmness about sacrificing his life. Emma is drowning in panic, gripping his jacket and begging him to stop, sounding like a man marching to his execution. Then the impossible happens. This merciless monster softens. His rough fingers rise to gently tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. He murmurs she is infinitely more valuable than his blood-soaked empire. He demands she grab Caleb and run the second the perimeter falls, promising the passports are waiting. She digs her nails into his wrist, commanding him to survive. You and I both know the ultimate truth here. Authentic love is never built on extravagant wealth. It is found in the terrifying promise a person makes right before they walk into an inferno just to spare you from the heat. Lucian slowly leans down, resting his forehead against hers, to deliver a tragic farewell, but Emma violently refuses the ending he is writing. Her fingers twist into his dark shirt, her voice breaking as she swears that if he dies tonight, she will hate him forever. A low laugh escapes his throat as he points out her hatred is hardly a threat. She fiercely replies, it is the only weapon she has left. Observe how a stubborn, defiant rage is often the most powerful anchor we possess against the dark. Outside, an engine roars to life. He whispers his time has run out, yet neither shifts an inch. Then, his hands frame her face, pulling her into a desperate kiss. There is no sweet romance here, only a violent collision of raw panic and survival. He swears he will return. In the next breath, he tears himself away, dissolving into the freezing shadows and leaving her alone in the quiet. Listen as the tires fade into the night. The reality of the impending slaughter drops like a heavy weight over the estate. Emma locks herself in the dark study, paralyzed by the torture of the unknown. The clock ticks mercilessly, stretching the agony from 1 in the morning into the freezing isolation of 2, then 3. This exposes a painful truth. We rarely recognize the absolute depth of our devotion until we stare down the terror of losing someone. The mansion feels like a sealed tomb as she prays for the ruthless boss who saved her. Then, just before dawn, the dead silence shatters. The frantic rhythm of heavy boots slams against the marble foyer. Ignoring the pain in her ribs, Emma bolts down the staircase, only to freeze in pure horror. 4 battered enforcers are desperately dragging a motionless 5th man across the threshold. Witness the gravity of this tragic frame with me. The fallen figure is Lucian, his suit saturated in a sickening amount of blood. Emma feels the foyer spin, her eyes locked on the crimson trail staining the marble. Yet, in a stunning display of willpower, the fallen king lifts his heavy head. He finds her through the haze, locking his failing eyes with hers, and forces a heartbreaking smile. He murmurs that he kept his promise. The next second, his legs surrender. Emma screams tears through the hall as he crashes down. She drops to her knees, hands hovering over his chest. We learn a profound lesson here. The purest form of loyalty only reveals itself when chaos reigns and we are stripped of all power. She begs him to stay awake, screaming for the medic. The guards swear help is 2 minutes away, but looking at his dangerously pale face, Emma knows his time is already spent. Emma slams her bare hands against his horrific wounds, desperately fighting to stem the blood as she screams at the guards, demanding to know what went wrong. A bleeding enforcer slumps against the wall, muttering that parley was a setup. They walked into a slaughter, outnumbered 5 to 1. A wild panic surges through Emma. She looks down at the dying titan, asking why he stepped into such an obvious snare. Despite his fading strength, Lucian squeezes her fingers. He whispers, his voice a frail rasp, that he had to end the threat permanently. This presents a terrifying reality. Sometimes the only path to secure lasting peace is walking willingly into the center of a raging inferno. Blinking through hot tears, she asks if the war is truly over. With a blood-stained grin across his pale face, he confirms the rival leader is dead. It is a massive victory. But as the doors burst open to reveal the frantic underground surgeon, Emma weeps, terrified that the final price for her peace was his life. Let us look at this sequence piece by piece, together. The camera follows the sheer chaos. A frantic medical team scrambles, demanding 4 units of blood while hurling Lucian onto a steel stretcher. Emma is shoved aside. His grip tears from hers, leaving bright, wet streaks across her pale palms. The visual echo of a severed lifeline. As death creeps over his face, he chokes out her name. She snatches his hand back, her voice cracking as she swears she is anchored right there. They sprint down the opulent corridors toward a hidden surgical suite, a cold room built for syndicate fallout. The brutal lesson here is that gilded mansions are never truly homes, only elaborate cages hiding rot. The surgeon blocks the heavy doors. Emma fights to push through, but Lucien uses his final agonizing breath to beg her to stay behind. Emma stands ready to tear those heavy hinges apart, but the fractured look in his fading eyes freezes her in place. Even as he bleeds out on the metal table, he is trying to shield her from the trauma of watching him be cut open. She grips his freezing fingers one last time, weeping as she commands him to fight the Reaper. He closes his eyes, whispering a broken vow that he will always find his way back. The steel doors slam shut. The lock clicks. Emma is left alone in the dim, suffocating hallway, staring at the drying rust color on her skin. A scarred security guard steps from the shadows, gently urging her to rest. We must accept that the hardest human battle is often sitting helplessly while fate flips a coin. She tries to hold onto her armor, but her bones vibrate with shock. The guard admits the blade struck deep, risking massive internal bleeding, but swears his boss refuses to lose. Hearing those words, her legs finally give out. The guard introduces himself as Marcus, offering a grim smile and a joke that half the syndicate payroll shares his name. He praises her for holding pressure on the fatal wound, swearing her quick action bought their boss a few vital minutes. Emma cannot look away from her stained palms, feeling entirely hollow. Marcus observes that she held her ground instead of breaking, a rare and valuable trait in their violent world. She softly confesses that watching her mother fade away in cold hospital beds gave her the worst kind of practice. The truth we eventually face is that past trauma never cures our present pain. It merely teaches us to mask our silent panic. Marcus slowly nods. He admits no one ever gets used to the violence, they just become better actors. Agonizing hours drag forwards on barely still coffee and empty promises. Just as the pale morning sun bleeds through the frosted glass, the heavy silence shatters. Caleb finally bursts into the hallway. Caleb appears drained of all color as he steps into the harsh corridor light. Emma instantly collapses into her brother, burying her face in his shoulder as her fragile composure shatters. She weeps so violently that her bruised ribs burn, yet the tears fall without end. Caleb offers no empty comfort. He simply wraps his arms around her and holds on tight. It proves that when a spirit is actively breaking into pieces, silence and a steady presence are worth far more than spoken words. Catching her breath, she whispers the terrifying scale of the ambush. Caleb squeezes her trembling fingers, settling in for the long, brutal wait. Beyond these walls, the city wakes up completely blind to an underworld king battling death, simply because he refused to abandon the woman he loved. At 9:47, the heavy steel doors finally unlatch. The surgeon steps out, his scrubs painted red. Against all logical odds, Lucien is stable. The blade missed his heart by a fraction. You and I can imagine the sheer, crashing wave of relief that forces Emma to her knees. Granted a strict 5-minute window, she slips into the sterile room. The air is thick with the sharp, clinical smell of antiseptic. Seeing Lucien stripped of his imposing armor provides a jarring psychological contrast. Tied to a chorus of rhythmic, beeping monitors, the most feared man in the city suddenly looks entirely fragile. She drags a heavy metal chair to the bedside, pressing his pale hand against her wet cheek. She whispers that he is an absolute fool, weeping as she thanks him for surviving the slaughter. In response, his cold fingers offer a faint, miraculous twitch. A profound emotional tether can clearly reach through the thickest fog of unconsciousness. The guards leave her in absolute peace. Sheer exhaustion eventually pulls her into a deep, dreamless sleep against the mattress. Hours later, she snaps awake. A familiar, warm hand is gently brushing through her tangled hair. You and I have probably both made this mistake, judging someone's blazing anger without seeing the absolute terror hiding beneath it. The room is swallowed by the cold, grey light of late afternoon. Yet there is Lucien. His dark eyes are open, fixed sharply upon her. He manages a raspy, broken greeting, and Emma feels her throat close entirely. She tells him, voice shaking, that he looks like a walking corpse. He offers a weak smirk, admitting he feels even worse. Slowly, he lifts a heavy hand to trace her jawline. When he asks how long he was out, she whispers, "It has been 18 agonizing hours." The medical staff called his survival a miracle, but Emma boils with rage over his reckless choice to fight 4 armed men alone. His expression instantly hardens to stone. He states he would gladly take a bullet before letting an enemy touch her. We often project our fiercest anger onto the people we are terrified of losing. As his thumb brushes her cheek, her fury melts away. The air in the quiet room grows incredibly heavy. Emma leans in to rest her forehead against his, carefully moving past the tragic maze of plastic lines. She softly begs him never to pull a sacrificial stunt like that again. Lucien replies with a quiet, raspy vow that he will always fight to keep breathing. Sliding his heavy hand to the back of her neck, he admits a truth that fractures the foundation of his dark world. She means far more to him than any criminal empire. Right as the romantic weight of his words settles, the door violently swings open. Marcus fills the frame, his face carved from pale granite. A rival syndicate is demanding an immediate parley, and they have named Emma as the central piece on the board. The atmosphere instantly turns to ice. Fighting past the agony of fresh stitches, Lucien forces himself upright. The bitter reality of absolute power is that your most fatal vulnerability will always be the innocent people you allow yourself to love. A cold wave of nausea crashes over Emma, instantly draining the color from her face. She scrambles to imagine what dark, twisted advantage the enemy could possibly hold over her. Lucien refuses to sit back and guess. He swings his legs off the mattress, completely ignoring the frantic warnings of his physician. His voice returns to its familiar, commanding growl. He orders a meeting in exactly 2 hours, demanding double the usual muscle. Within 30 minutes, he is dressed in pitch-black clothing and heavily armed, drowning out the desperate protests of the medical staff. From the corner, Emma watches how he slightly favors his torn side, masking blinding pain. She pleads with him to stay in bed, but he simply racks the slide of his pistol with chilling, practiced calm. He promises to end anyone who speaks her name as a threat. The truest measure of love is standing up to wage war, even when your own shattered body is begging you to surrender to the cold floor. Lucien secures his heavy weapon in its leather holster, firmly instructing her to remain safely hidden behind locked doors. Emma instantly rejects the command, crossing her arms like a stone barricade. She is completely finished playing the fragile bystander while he sheds his own blood to protect her. If the rival opposition is holding her dark past as a weapon, she demands a seat at the table to face it. They lock into a silent, fierce battle of wills. The tension is thick enough to cut. It's until Lucien finally exhales a heavy breath of defeat. He offers a rigid compromise. She stays sealed inside the armored transport with his best men, only stepping out if he gives the absolute signal. Taking his hand, Emma feels the subtle, uncontrollable tremors racing through his veins. Ignoring the fresh, tearing agony in his side, he pulls her close, pressing a fierce kiss to her forehead. We must accept that we cannot shield the people we love from the darkness forever. Let us step into this scene together and watch a controlled environment become a deadly snare. The meeting is at an abandoned warehouse, a graveyard where loose ends are erased. Emma sits in an armored transport, flanked by massive enforcers. Through the thick glass, she watches Lucian disappear into the rusted entrance. To the world, he projects power, but she alone sees the drag of his wounded leg. The passing minutes stretch into psychological torture. Suddenly, her phone vibrates. The text demands she enter alone, or her brother dies. She prays it is a bluff, until a second message arrives, making her stomach drop. Life teaches us a very simple lesson here. The exact moment we finally assume our loved ones are completely safe is usually when the darkness falls. A grainy image loads on her phone, and the foundation of Emma's reality shatters. It is her brother Caleb in his wheelchair, a pistol resting against his head. She is swallowed by a deafening terror that blocks out the world. Yet, when she speaks, her voice is stripped of panic. She tells the guards she is leaving the truck. When an enforcer blocks her, Emma slams the screen against his chest. She threatens to scream loud enough to bring every police car in the city to their location. The guard hesitates, then lets his men flank her. Emma sprints toward that rotting building, throwing her weight against the metal doors. Life shows us a hard truth in moments like this. Sometimes, willingly walking right into a burning house is the only way to pull your family from the ashes. The warehouse stretches out like a cold tomb, broken lights casting jagged shadows. Trapped inside are Lucian and Marcus, surrounded by armed enforcers. Seated in the middle with a gun to his head is Caleb. Lucian screams for Emma to run. A figure in a sharp suit steps from the gloom, mocking her panic. Emma begs the man to take her instead, but he shakes his head with a chilling revelation. Her recent beating was just a test to peel back her disguise. He recognizes the phantom she was before her mother died. Emma feels her blood freeze. Let us look at this together, because it reveals a deep truth about human nature. You can sprint to the ends of the earth, but the shadow of your unhealed past will always match your pace. Emma tries to hold on to her false identity, but the man in the suit only offers a cruel smirk. He calls how 15 years ago, a wealthy businessman died in a fire. He lets silence suffocate the room before dropping a devastating bombshell. It was not an accident. The floor seems to tilt beneath Emma as he claims she was only 9 when she struck the fatal match, seeking revenge for her abused mother. He pulls out a faded newspaper clipping as proof. Emma weakly denies it, but the man points at Caleb, exposing mismatched birth records and a lifetime of lies. Caleb stares at his sister with raw, shattering betrayal. This tragic moment imparts a profound lesson. The absolute heaviest burdens we ever carry are the secrets we choose to hide from the people we love the most. Caleb trembles, asking his sister what this stranger means. Emma cannot even draw a breath. She tries to explain, but the man's voice booms over hers, declaring that she burned someone alive. The silence is deafening. Lucian stares at her, his face hollowed by shock, begging her to say it is a lie. Emma opens her mouth, but the denial dies in her throat. Every word is the harrowing truth. She whispers that she was only 9 and the man was beating her mother. The suited rival cuts her off, noting that setting fires in 3 places is pure malice. He paints her as a monster, playing the victim, until Lucian snaps, roaring for the man to shut his mouth. This stands as a grim reminder. A single moment of blind rage has the power to permanently redefine your entire existence. Lucian tries to dismiss her history, but the rival unleashes a mocking laugh. He has a prosecutor ready to reopen the case, and evidence exposing Emma as a fugitive. He demands half of Lucian's crime family. If Lucian surrenders, Emma's history is erased. If he refuses, Emma goes down for murder. Caleb enters the system and Lucian's world burns. The weight of this choice is crushing. Emma grips a rusted pole, her knuckles white just to keep from collapsing. 15 years of running, trying to scrub the phantom smell of smoke from her hands, and it is all crashing down. Her voice splinters as she begs Lucian not to surrender his empire. We learn a profound truth here. You can build a beautiful life over a hidden past, but eventually, that fragile foundation will always crack. You and I can feel the heartbreak here. Let him turn me in, Emma pleads, her spirit crushed. Lucian ignores the guns aimed at his chest and steps toward her, demanding she look him in the eye. Emma expects to see disgust, but when she raises her head, there is no revulsion. She sees only a man trying to save a broken girl who believes she is beyond saving. He quietly asks for the real story. Emma nods, choking on tears, and the truth spills out. The man was beating her mother to death, and as a powerless child, she just wanted to scare him. She lit matches in the corners, but the flames spread too fast while he was passed out. She remembers the exact second she realized she had become the monster. This is a tragic life lesson. When you try to burn down your own demons, you usually end up catching fire yourself. You were 9 and you survived, Lucian tells her, his voice hardened into steel. He glares at the rival, declaring her survival is all that matters. Lucian drops the coldest ultimatum. Let the boy go. Burn the files, and you walk out breathing. The suit laughs, mocking his crumbling syndicate. Lucian's hand drifts to his holster. No, Lucian replies, you are here to die. Chaos erupts. Marcus and the guards raise their weapons. The stranger jams his gun harder into Caleb's skull. Lucian's aim does not flinch. He swears that if that trigger is pulled, everyone in this building is going to hell. It is the ultimate standoff, with everyone frozen in terror. In this silence, Emma realizes the hardest truth. Protecting your family means making the brutal sacrifice nobody else is willing to make. Look at the madness unfolding here. Emma sprints straight at Caleb and that loaded weapon, ready to take a bullet. Lucian lets out a raw, gut-wrenching scream. She grabs the wheelchair, ripping it out of the line of fire. With a surge of adrenaline, the shooter panics, swinging his weapon wildly, and a single shot shatters the room. At first, she does not feel the agony, registering only a heavy pressure before hitting the floor. Chaos explodes. Emma stares blankly at the flickering lights, wondering why her side feels like it is freezing over. Lucian drops to his knees, his tough exterior shattered, begging her not to die. Here is the profound reality about genuine sacrifice. It never gives you a warning. It just happens in that quiet, split-second space between heartbeats. The warehouse chaos fades into static. She hears Caleb losing his mind and feels Lucian frantically pressing his hands against her wrecked chest. His voice breaks, crying that she does not get to pull a sacrifice play on him. Then it is lights out. When she regains consciousness, it is a world of blinding agony. Every breath feels like inhaling crushed glass. A calm doctor explains the bullet collapsed her lung and she is wildly lucky to not be in a body bag. Staring at the ceiling, Emma only cares about one thing. She forces out a rough whisper asking for Caleb, and the doctor promises the kid is safe. Let us take a closer look at what that means, you and I. At the end of the day, a genuine bond of love always finds a way to pull us right back from the edge. The doctor casually mentions she played the hero, and brutal memories flood her brain. The warehouse, that gunshot, sprinting into the jaws of the Reaper. She panics, trying to sit up, asking for Lucian. The doctor gently pushes her down, dropping a heavy truth bomb. Lucian is out there right now, systematically deleting anyone who ever saw her file. Emma feels sick, finding out they lost 7 loyal guys just to keep her breathing. An exhausted voice drops from the doorway. Lucian is standing there, looking like he aged a decade in one night. His clothes are still caked in her dried blood, and his eyes look completely haunted. It paints a stark picture. It goes to show the heaviest burdens we carry are always the ones we willingly pick up to protect the people we care about the most. The doctor vanishes into the corridor, leaving a suffocating silence. Lucian drags his exhausted frame forward. The gap to her bed feels like an uncrossable ocean. He drops the hammer with a hollow thud, his voice a low rasp. For 15 years she dodged a murder charge, letting him ignite a bloody turf war. Would she have helped him if she knew the truth? She whispers that she has no idea. The admission breaks him. His face contorts into devastating heartbreak. He finally realizes she was just a terrified kid, doing anything to shield her mother from a monster. She cries that her youth is no excuse, but he just stares at her in the dim light. We often judge people for their darkest secrets, before realizing they were simply surviving the only tragic way they knew how. Lucian paces the room like a cornered beast. He is fuming. She built a flawless ghost identity, and now he is scrubbing real blood off his hands to cover her tracks. Emma sobs into the sheets, whispering that she will just disappear forever. That promise sets him off worse. He whips around, his voice raw. He does not care what she did 15 years ago. He is furious because she kept him in the dark while he was falling for her. This hardened leader caught feelings against every survival instinct he ever had. He burned alliances and dropped bodies just to keep her safe. And the truly crazy part? He would do it all again. It proves that real loyalty is just finding someone whose deepest messes you are perfectly willing to clean up. Emma completely crumbles, crying out that she is nothing more than a murderer, but Lucian refuses to let her drown in that tragic narrative. He drops to his knees, fiercely reshaping her trauma. He calls her a true survivor who carried an impossible burden without breaking. She begs him to walk away. Instead, he gently wipes a tear from her cheek, declaring himself permanently anchored to her storm. Then he reveals the chilling truth. He erased every trace of her past, a slate bought with 3 human lives. Emma is gutted, whispering she is not worth such terrible bloodshed. Let us unpack this together, you and I. True devotion in this dark world rarely keeps a clean ledger. The deepest love often demands the most unforgiving sacrifices to protect the people we hold dear. Lucian leans closer, pressing his forehead against hers. He promises her soul is worth every drop of spilled blood, but the romance quickly drops into a harsh reality check. He cannot sustain this war if she keeps throwing herself into the line of fire. Emma fiercely defends her choices, claiming she was merely shielding Caleb. Lucian sees right through the martyrdom. He calls her sacrifice exactly what it is, a beautiful disguise for self-destruction. For 15 years, she has sprinted from her own shadow, terrified of vulnerability. He shatters her walls, stating she would rather take a bullet than simply ask for a steady hand. It holds a painful mirror up to human nature. So often, our most courageous acts are simply elaborate masks, hiding our deepest, unspoken fears. The camera lingers on Lucian, his knuckles white as his fists clench. His voice carries an aching frustration born from profound care. He begs her to act as a unified front, instead of relying on solo heroics that only lead to hospital beds. Emma tries to rebuild her familiar fortress of ice, but the foundation is crumbling. Her shoulders sag. She is completely burnt out, whispering how exhausted she is from constantly running. Lucian drops to his knees, anchoring her with an unwavering gaze. He tells her the evasion ends right now. She must stop carrying the crushing weight of the world in total isolation. The underlying truth here is beautifully clear. Sometimes the absolute bravest choice a person can make is simply stepping back and allowing themselves to be held. He needs her to see that lowering her shield is not a sign of defeat. True trust requires far more spine than simply destroying an enemy. Emma stares at this hardened boss through blurred vision. He went to war for her, offering a devotion she never believed she deserved. Finally, she confesses her darkest terror. She fears he will eventually see her as nothing more than a frightened child who made colossal mistakes. In response, Lucian pulls her tightly against his chest, swearing he will never walk away. The emotional dam breaks entirely. Emma is torn apart by agonizing, heavy sobs. We all eventually reach that critical boiling point in our own lives. Sometimes you just have to completely shatter before you can finally start putting your broken pieces back together. When the tears subside, she looks up to ask for their next strategic move, but Lucian changes the script. Brushing the tangled hair from her face with surprising gentleness, he declares their only mission now is healing. He promises she and Caleb are completely off the radar. They will face the fallout once she regains her strength. Emma nods, burying her face against his chest, desperately wanting to trust this fragile ceasefire. Outside, the cold morning sun creeps over the city skyline, its pale light washing over two broken souls, clinging to one another like life rafts. Her racing heart finally settles into a steady rhythm. It reminds us of a fundamental truth. Even in our absolute darkest chapters, we still deeply deserve to feel the warmth of the morning sun. Emma melts into the steady rhythm of his breathing, whispering a quiet thank you for not abandoning her. His arms tighten around her, acting as an unshakable anchor in her chaotic storm. He murmurs that she is officially stuck with him now. For the first time in her life, the idea of being tied down does not trigger her instinct to bolt. Surrendering control suddenly feels exactly like true freedom. As the pulse of the monitor lulls her to sleep, he confesses his love despite her violent history. Exhaustion pulls her under before she can answer. It is a vital reminder that real love never judges the lingering ghosts of our past. Yet, fate rarely allows peace to linger. Without warning, the deafening crash of shattering glass entirely obliterates their quiet morning. This is the exact moment the illusion of safety is obliterated. Emma's eyes snap open as white-hot agony tears through her lungs. The room is swallowed in pitch black, save for the moonlight bleeding over the shattered glass. The clock glows a menacing 3:47. Deep within the compound, a blood-curdling scream rips through the silence. She forces her broken body upright as the door violently kicks open. Marcus bursts inside, gripping a pistol, and declares a code red. Kravik's hit squad has breached the walls, and 20 men are hunting her down. This sequence teaches a cold reality. When genuine danger comes knocking in the dead of night, you instantly discover what your survival instincts are truly made of. Marcus drags Emma down the dark hallway. Every step sends blinding agony through her shattered ribs, but primal survival takes the wheel. The heavy thud of combat boots echoes up the stairs right on their heels. They whip around a blind corner and nearly collide with two mercenaries. Without hesitation, Marcus drops them both with two deafening shots. He shoves Emma forward, screaming at her to run. He shouts out the safe room code, ordering her to lock the steel doors and wait. Then, this loyal soldier turns back, stepping directly into the jaws of certain death just to buy her a few precious seconds. The life lesson here is written in blood. True loyalty is never verified in times of comfort. It is proven the exact second someone willingly steps between you and a roaring fire. Emma collapses through the heavy door, hands trembling as she punches the sequence. The steel locks engage with a deafening slam. Inside this freezing bunker, bathed in the glow of security feeds, Caleb and Clara sit paralyzed. Caleb begs to know what is happening. Leaning against the wall, Emma promises this room can withstand anything. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocks the estate. On the monitors, the east wing vanishes into a roaring wall of fire. Clara covers her mouth in horror. Emma frantically scans the grid until she spots Lucian on the third floor. He is entirely cornered, trading brutal gunfire. This moment highlights a deeply painful truth. Watching the people we love fight our battles from a safe distance is the most helpless burden a person can carry. Emma stands frozen, eyes locked on the glowing screens. Every shot Lucian takes is calculated, but the math is against him. Caleb wheels his chair forward, screaming. They cannot hide while their people are slaughtered. Emma grips the desk, stating that stepping out is a death sentence. She can barely stand, and he is in a wheelchair. Caleb shoots her a look of betrayal, accusing her of watching their protectors die. The accusation slices deep because it is true. On the monitor, Lucian is forced back to the grand staircase, his shirt soaked in blood. He is running out of real estate. You and I have both likely wrestled with the guilt of survival. The bitter lesson is stark. Sometimes, surviving means you must sit in silence while others pay the ultimate price for your safety. Let us look at how the camera frames this bunker. The oxygen feels impossibly thin, a visual representation of terror wrapping its cold hands around Emma. She faces a brutal equation. Staying hidden means Lucian dies. Clara begs her to stay, but Emma is already gone. She drives a steel chair through the weapons cabinet lock, shattering the illusion of safety. Caleb pleads with her, terrified she is marching into a slaughterhouse. Yet, as she racks the slide of a handgun, the underlying truth of the scene solidifies. The highest form of courage is refusing to let the people we love face the darkness alone. Caleb sees that absolute resolve burning in her eyes. The psychological shift is instant. He chooses to ride into the fire beside her. Notice the defiance as Caleb pushes his wheelchair forward. Emma tries to block his path, playing the protector, but he shatters that narrative. He confesses he knows everything. The childhood fire, the life she took at 9 years old, and the decades spent running. Tears stream down his face. He is not angry at her violent history. He is furious she carried that agonizing psychological weight alone. She claimed her secrecy was a shield, but Caleb dismantles that lie. She was simply terrified to look at her own broken reflection. The takeaway here is devastating. Hiding our deepest wounds from our family never keeps them safe. It merely leaves everyone drowning in their own isolated silence. Stripped of her armor, Emma slides down the cold steel cabinet. She knows he is absolutely right. Emma accepts this grim truth. Though the danger remains suffocating, wheeling into a crossfire is a death sentence for someone who cannot walk. Yet, Caleb reaches for a weapon, declaring that family watches out for each other. For years, Emma faced the wolves on her own. In this heavy cinematic beat, she finally stops pretending she does not need help. She readies his gun and tells him to stay behind her. Clara pleads from the corner, Terrified, they are rolling into open graves. Emma simply checks her magazine. The thematic lesson is profound. Accepting vet's help does not make you weak. It gives you the absolute strength to step right into the fire. She pushes the heavy oak door open to a hallway choked with thick smoke and echoing gunfire. She looks back at Caleb, telling him to stay close. They slip into the corridor, moving like ghosts through the smoke. The estate has transformed into a complete war zone, beautifully shot with bullets chewing the walls and fire consuming the wings. Emma pulls Caleb back from checking a fallen guard. Suddenly, the surgical wound on her side tears open. Hot blood soaks her shirt, but she refuses to stop. You and I both know that sometimes intense physical pain is just a brutal reminder that you are alive enough to keep fighting. This detail grounds the action in raw human endurance. They creep to the grand staircase and peer over the edge. Down in the foyer, Lucian and his remaining guards are trapped in a desperate defensive circle. They are running dry on ammunition, firing with the agonizing hesitation of dead men walking. Caleb whispers they need a distraction, and Emma's eyes lock onto the chandelier above the foyer. That the iron chain is damaged. She asks if he can make the shot not. Bracing against his wheelchair, Caleb exhales and fires. He misses by inches. Instantly, the gunmen snap their aim toward the balcony. Emma violently yanks his chair backward just as the air fills with flying lead. The marble disintegrates, missing her by a whisper. The reality of survival is painted clearly here. When a wild plan falls apart, you never freeze, you move. She drags Caleb behind a thick column as the space is chewed to dust. Slicing through the roaring gunfire, she hears Lucian. The boss has broken his defensive circle. Covered in blood, he is fighting his way up the crumbling stairs, coming straight for her. Lucian moves sluggishly, weighed down by exhaustion, but his eyes lock onto Emma with insane intensity. Knowing he would die trying to reach the top alone, Emma steps from the column and opens fire. The brutal recoil nearly knocks her flat. Her lungs scream, but she pulls the trigger until the chamber clicks empty. It buys him just enough time. Lucian violently shoves her behind the pillar, using his own body as a physical shield. He demands to know what she is doing, his voice cracking with absolute terror. True devotion, as this scene argues, is stepping into the line of fire for someone else, even when it defies all logic. Emma touches his bruised face. She sarcastically remarks that since he was supposed to stay safely alive, they are both deeply disappointing each other today. A broken laugh rips from Lucian's throat. He pulls her in for a desperate kiss, tasting of blood, bitter ash, and the terrifying reality that they might die any second. He confesses his love, immediately followed by how furiously angry he is that she risked her life. Emma just smiles. Fumbling to reload, Lucian peeks around the marble column, deciding they will make a dash for the garage. He is leaving the mansion to burn. Emma is stunned. This place was the very foundation of his entire empire. But Lucian does not hesitate. He swears he would let his whole world turn to ash if it meant keeping her breathing. We often learn what truly matters only when everything else is violently stripped away. Grabbing Caleb's wheelchair, they bolt from cover into the chaotic crossfire. Lucian pushes Caleb's chair with one arm, firing with the other. Emma sprints alongside, blindly shooting to hold the hitman back. They tear past the rooms where she once lived as an invisible ghost in his empire. The steel garage door looms ahead. Suddenly, Marcus materializes from the smoke. Bleeding from a severe head wound, he plants his feet and unleashes a wall of suppressing fire. Lucian punches the code, shoving Caleb and Emma inside. He screams for Marcus to follow. As Marcus turns, a bullet catches him in the spine. He collapses to the floor, completely still. Emma screams, fighting to run back into the crossfire, but Lucian grabs her. He violently drags her inside and slams the heavy door shut. The deadbolt engages with the cold finality of a tomb. The sensory chaos of this moment is overwhelming. Emma is devastated, screaming at Lucian not to leave Marcus behind. But Lucian remains rigid. He understands the cruel math of the Mafia. Going back means adding their own bodies to the pile. Stick with me here, because the hardest part of surviving a war is choosing who gets left in the dirt. While Emma shakes from the trauma, Lucian secures Caleb into the armored truck. As they speed out, she watches his empire go upward in flames in the mirror. She is crying, but he grips the wheel tight. Here is a life lesson. Sometimes you have to let your entire castle burn to the ground just to keep your family breathing. Power means nothing when you are dead. He floors the gas pedal, and the mansion violently detonates behind them. The engine roars as Emma watches the estate turn into a smoking ashtray. In the back, Caleb is panicked, demanding to know where they are going. Lucian rips the wheel around a sharp corner and delivers a chilling promise. They are heading to a Brooklyn safe house. If their enemies want a war, they are getting a bloodbath. We have to look at the heartbreaking irony in this tragedy. The shadowy figure who ordered this hit is the exact same boss who took Lucian in off the streets. He raised him and taught him the trade. The life lesson here is deeply brutal. The most fatal backstabs never come from strangers in the dark. The worst snake bites always come from the exact people who taught you how to survive. Now, the grieving student is gearing up for pure, calculated revenge. The dark Manhattan streets fly by, and the atmosphere inside the truck is suffocating. Emma is traumatized. The mansion is gone, Marcus is dead, and her world is fractured. But watch Lucian's face. He has flipped a dark psychological switch. He tells her you do not walk away from a mob hit of this magnitude. You either strike back with overwhelming force, or you end up buried 6 feet under. Emma looks at his cold expression and realizes the gentleman she thought she knew is dead. In his place sits a ruthless crime boss ready to drown the city streets in blood. It reveals a harsh lesson. People will show you exactly who they are when their back is against the wall, and you better believe them the first time. The inescapable cycle of violence is starting all over again. Emma whispers she wants no part in this upcoming slaughter. Lucian looks at her with ice in his veins and delivers an unyielding ultimatum. They are about to plot the total wipeout of everyone who crossed them. If she cannot handle the ugly reality of mob justice, she needs to walk away right now. He promises to keep her safe, but refuses to apologize for becoming a savage. He tells her to wake up and stop pretending he is a hero because he runs a criminal empire. The life lesson carries immense weight. Sometimes surviving the darkest nights means tossing your pristine morals out the window and teaming up with the monster in the room. Despite being terrified of the man he is becoming, Emma leans into his touch. She knows he is dangerous, but she chooses to stay anyway. The camera pans across to the cold concrete of the underground garage. The silence between them is heavy enough to choke on. You and I have both felt that urge to run. The desperate thought Emma has to just grab Caleb and vanish. But a normal life is just a ghost story. Her childhood shattered at 9 years old with the crack of a gunshot. Yet Lucian, radiating a terrifying gravity, is the only man who looked at her broken pieces and stayed. The lesson here is simple. Stop chasing a fake peace and hold on to the people who stand with you in the dirt. Her fingers wrap tightly around his freezing knuckles. She is not running. She only begs for one thing. When the ash finally settles, she needs him to build a life that does not involve digging graves. The sharp angle of Lucian's jaw tightens under the flickering light. He gives a single, rigid nod. He will try. It is a fraction of a promise, but Emma knows it is the only mercy she will extract today. The heavy doors slam shut, and the wheels of Caleb's chair echo down the rotting corridor to room 304. Inside the freezing safe house, 3 remaining syndicate men stand like coiled springs. You can see the pure thirst for blood in their eyes. An older enforcer recites the grim tally: 8 of their own dead, 16 enemies left in the smoking ruins. The lesson is loud and clear: never put all your survival in one place. Lucian kept their money and network completely off the grid. The bankroll is untouched, and they are about to purchase an ocean of violence. The blue glow of the monitors washes over Lucian's unblinking face. He stands there, commanding a massacre with the chilling calm of a man ordering coffee. With a few keystroke, he launches a strike on every enemy stronghold. Emma feels her stomach twist. She begs him to spare the innocent people working the floors, the ones who always catch the stray bullets. Not a single muscle in Lucian's face moves. In his cold reality, collateral damage is just a line item on an invoice. Caleb's knuckles turn white on his wheelchair, frozen by the magnitude of the slaughter. The tragic life lesson is impossible to ignore. When you start burning down the world for revenge, the fire almost always consumes the people who never even wanted a part in your war. Emma spins toward the exit, but Lucian's hand clamps her wrist. He watches the terror breaking behind her eyes. Without a word, he lets go, pressing a burner phone into her palm. She tears the rooftop door open. The freezing wind hits her lungs as her knees finally give out. She stares at the red glow over the city, choking on the guilt. A war is burning the streets just because she is breathing. Then, the metal door groans open. Caleb pushes his chair over the threshold, rolling through the cold to park right next to her. We both know this truth. When the floor vanishes beneath your feet, one familiar face is all it takes to keep you steady. The hardest moments of our lives are just filters, revealing exactly who is willing to sit quietly beside us in the ashes. The tears finally spill over and Emma shatters. Her voice cracks as she begs his forgiveness, horrified by the nightmare of guns and blood she dragged him into. But Caleb does not flinch. He reaches from his chair and wraps his fingers around her shaking hand. Staring out at the distant sirens, he tells her the flat truth. He would rather dodge bullets in the dark with her than live a quiet, completely hollow life by himself. He heard the body count. He knows the brutal math of this war, and he is not walking away. It leaves us with a painful, beautiful lesson about loyalty. Real love is not about running for cover when the sky breaks open. It is about grabbing the hand of the person beside you, holding on even tighter when the falling rain turns into shattered glass. Caleb locks his eyes onto hers and rips away the fantasy. The hitmen are never going to stop coming until they are in the ground. He refuses to judge Lucian for turning into a monster, not when that monster is the only reason they are breathing. But Emma is empty, crushed by the weight of all this death. She whispers that she cannot accept this as her life. Caleb squeezes her hand to ground her. He tells her she does not have to accept it. She just has to live through it, survive the storm tonight, and maybe she can pull Lucian back from hell tomorrow. It is a harsh lesson we all must swallow. When the world falls apart, simply surviving the day is a massive victory. You can never start healing the wound until you finally manage to stop the bleeding. The morning light bleeds over the skyline, casting sharp shadows across the roof. Emma pulls a jagged breath into her lungs. The panic is gone, replaced by something cold and hard. She rolls Caleb back into the tension of the war room. Lucian looks up from his glowing kill list. Without a single tremor in her voice, Emma steps over the edge. She vows to cross any moral line to bury their enemies. Lucian pulls her to his chest, pressing his lips to her temple, warning her the blood is about to get deeper. She already knows. Standing there, her last scrap of innocence turns to ash. Life constantly forces us into brutal corners, teaching us a terrifying truth. Protecting the people we love almost always costs us a piece of our own soul, a piece we can never possibly buy back. The sunrise pours through the glass, staining the walls a wet, unforgiving red. The terrified girl who spent her life hiding is gone, replaced by a queen commanding a bloody board. Over 72 hours, Lucian orchestrates a masterpiece of violence. Emma stands frozen at the screens, watching an empire get torn apart. Day 1 leaves enemy warehouses burning. Day 2 drains their bank accounts and drops their soldiers. By day 3, the rival family is a graveyard, and Lucian's crew does not have a single scratch. There is a dark lesson hiding in this carnage. Sometimes, the only way to stop running from the monsters in the dark is to stand your ground, look them right in the eye, and strike the match yourself. 4 a.m. The final rival target Starks are trapped in a crumbling apartment. You and I know that heavy silence that drops right before the thunder rolls in. The camera holds on Lucian as he tightens his tactical vest, his eyes locked in the cold stare of a predator. Emma steps close, begging him in a jagged whisper to let his men finish the job. He does not blink. He simply racks his gun. In his twisted mind, a king must swing sword himself to ensure the grave is dug. She brings up his promise of a quiet life, but his only peace is scorched earth. It reveals a haunting truth about human nature. The massive walls we build to protect the people we deeply love are almost always the exact same walls that trap them in the dark, right alongside us. Emma's hands are visibly shaking. Her voice breaks as she tells him this river of blood was never what she asked for. Lucian steps closer, tracing the curve of her cheekbone with a rough thumb. In his tragic mind, massacring anyone who might hurt her is the only love language he knows how to speak. Emma feels like she is drowning, terrified his addiction to vengeance will dig his grave. He rests his forehead against hers, whispering that he will never leave. But she knows how this brutal world works. Blood always demands more blood. She can practically hear the dirt hitting his coffin. The lesson here is absolute. You must know exactly when to drop the knife, because fighting an endless war will eventually burn down the very sanctuary you were so desperate to protect. Lucian's fingers dig into her shoulders. You can see the panic bleeding through his calm exterior, terrified that leaving a single enemy alive means losing her tomorrow. He refuses to roll the dice with her life. Emma shoves against his chest, her eyes blazing. She demands to know when the dying actually stops. Bury one rival, and another rises from the dirt to take their place. She warns him his soul is turning to ash, that soon he will just be a hollow shell holding a gun. He swears the killing ends the second she is safe. But safety is a myth in this life. She begs him to choose her over his rage. It teaches us something profound. Real power is not the capacity to burn a city to the ground. True strength is having the raw courage to finally drop the weapon. Tears carve lines down Emma's cheeks as she begs him to find the strength to walk away. The camera holds on Lucian's face, capturing the brutal war tearing him apart. His primal need To destroy anyone who threatens them collides with his urge to give her peace. He turns away, his spine rigid. When he speaks, his voice is terrifyingly hollow. He tells her he does not know how to be a man of mercy anymore. He is built for ruin. She asks who he has turned into, and his answer is devastating. He is the monster, willing to burn his own humanity to keep her heart beating. Emma crumbles under the weight of it. This moment lays bare the ultimate tragedy of attachment. In the desperate attempt to save the person you love the most, it is dangerously easy to completely destroy your own soul. Lucian drifts toward the heavy oak door, his posture completely hollow. He mutters, voice barely a scrape against the silence, that her survival is his only metric. Then Emma shatters the quiet. A guttural scream tears from her throat, rooting his boots to the floorboards. Breathing is not living, she yells, her voice echoing in the dim room. Hiding in shadows is just a slower death, and she will not let him carve out his own soul. He turns, his face violently twisted in agony, begging to know how he can risk her life on the mercy of monsters. Emma closes the space, her small hands locking over his trembling fists. She reminds him they are already an impossible miracle. You and I know this profound truth. Real transformation only begins the exact moment we drop our armor and bravely choose hope over fear. Shadows paint harsh lines across Lucian's face as he warns her about the vulnerability she is demanding. Emma stands rigid, an unmoving anchor. She commands him to choose the living woman right before him. The silence that follows is deafening. Watch closely as the psychological dam finally breaks. The ruthless boss completely shatters. With a bitter curse, he rips off his vest, hurling it against the wall. He collapses into a chair, burying his face in his hands, openly weeping. He confesses he only knows how to build empires through terror. Emma kneels slowly beside him in the dim light. It reminds us of a simple truth. Sometimes, the bravest action a person can take is allowing themselves to completely fall apart to protect a fragile new love. The camera pushes in close. Emma leans toward him, her voice a quiet anchor in the wreckage. She whispers the brutal war is already won. Now comes the terrifying part. Proving he is strong enough to drop his weapon, Lucian goes completely dead silent. Then his fortress crumbles. He pulls her into his lap, burying his face in her neck as a raw, hollow sob tears through his chest. The architect of violence is breaking wide open. When he speaks, he surrenders the final raid to his soldiers, warning that mercy might invite ruin. She simply presses a soft kiss to his forehead. We learn a vital lesson here. True partnership means sharing the crushing weight of the world. Stepping into the dark unknown is always less terrifying when you never have to walk it alone. The final assault unfolds away from Lucian's bloody hands. Emma watches the pale glow of the silent security monitors, feeling his large hand crushing hers as his men execute the raid. 17 breathless minutes later, 8 enemies lie dead. The rest surrender. The war is over. Lucian makes 2 heavy phone calls, one to banish the survivors, another to a weary detective, trading dead men's secrets to finally erase his own brutal past. He powers his phone off, pulls Emma tightly against his chest, and turns to stone. An hour passes in ringing silence before Caleb finds them huddled together in the dark. Walking away from your darkest demons is never a clean break. It is a slow, exhausting exhale after holding your breath for your entire life. Caleb's voice cuts through the gloom, confirming the perimeter is clear. The grand mansion is gutted, its elegant walls shredded by gunfire. The stone can be rebuilt, but their old life is entirely ash. Emma feels the sharp tension in Lucian's muscles as he silently grieves the bloody monuments of his history. She leans in, whispering that they will build something real now, on a foundation not soaked in blood. Caleb rolls his chair forward, asking the heavy question of what comes next. Lucian sits up, running a tired hand through his messy hair. He mentions a clean penthouse in the city, entirely disconnected from the underworld. Moving forward often means letting our old, toxic monuments burn to the ground, just so we can finally see the clear sky above. Let us look at this piece by piece, shall we? Lucian admits dismantling his syndicate will take months, but he is fully committed. Emma stares at his exhausted profile in absolute awe. This hardened king is stepping down from his blood-stained throne, so she never has to look over her shoulder again. When she warns that going clean will spawn new rivals, he flashes a razor-sharp smile. He is merely choosing a different battlefield, but the past always demands a final payment. The tension spikes when Caleb clears his throat, locking his eyes dead on his sister. Emma feels her stomach plummet. Her brother wants the ugly truth about her lies, starting with that tragic childhood fire. The dreaded moment of absolute reckoning has finally arrived. Watch Emma as she rips off the bandage, stripping away a decade of desperate, protective lies. Her hands tremble as she tells Caleb about the relentless beatings they endured. She confesses that at just 9 years old, blinded by sheer panic, she lit the match that started the fire. She spills the painful history of running, drowning in debt, and scrubbing floors just to keep him fed. By the time her story ends, Caleb is quietly crying. Emma's voice shatters completely as she begs for forgiveness. But Caleb wipes his eyes and orders her to stop apologizing. She was a child carrying the weight of the world. We often forget how much brutal strength survival demands. True forgiveness simply asks us to honor the heavy burdens our loved ones carried to keep us safe. The lighting softens as Caleb grips her shaking hands. There is no anger in his eyes, only a profound sorrow that she felt forced to swallow that secret entirely alone. When Emma swears she only wanted to shield him, Caleb reminds her firmly that he is 19 now. He survived losing his legs, dodging bullets, and watching their home burn. He does not see a monster. He sees a fiercely loyal guardian who sacrificed her youth for his survival. Pulling her into a tight hug, Caleb begs her to finally let him and Lucian carry the crushing weight. Lucian stands like a stone sentinel in the shadows, giving them room to heal. Here is a lesson for us all. The bravest act of love is putting down your heavy armor and letting someone else hold the umbrella. Let us pause right here, because the visual framing is pure cinema. Emma stands wiping her tears, caught between her resilient brother and the most dangerous man in the city. Both look at her like she is the absolute center of their universe. She admits her terror of trusting anyone, but Lucian steps into the light, swearing they will figure it out together. Cut to that afternoon. They step into a stunning, sun-drenched Tribeca penthouse high above the river. Emma is overwhelmed that a ruthless crime boss flipped his destiny just to give her a safe harbor. Here is the beautiful irony of the human experience. Sometimes the people who have been absolutely shattered by the world are the exact ones who know how to put your broken pieces back together. The camera captures the dizzying drop of the city as Lucian hands her a glass of whiskey. Emma stares through the glass, confessing her lingering anxiety. She whispers she is just waiting for this fragile dream to violently explode. Lucian steps close, placing a grounding hand on her back. He promises her this hard-won peace is completely real. She questions how two deeply broken people are supposed to fake a normal life. He simply gives her a quiet, knowing smile. They are not faking anything. His empire is going legal, and the paranoia is over. Emma feels a spark of something she buried 15 long years ago. Hope. You and I both know how rare that feeling is. You do not need a spotless past to build a beautiful future. You only need the brave courage to stay. Imagine standing on the edge of an unknown future, knowing the fall could wreck you. Emma whispers that he makes redemption sound entirely too easy. Lucian sets his glass down. He looks at her directly, warning that it will be a messy, painful process. He frames her face in his scarred hands, confessing he desperately wants to see what they can build when they stop merely surviving. When she admits she is terrified, he delivers a breathtaking response. Then let us be terrified together. Their kiss is no longer a desperate fight for control. It is soft, grounded in the sweet belief that they finally have time. The absolute bravest thing any survivor can do is drop their defensive guard and actively choose to love the person standing right in front of them. A soft laugh escapes Emma as she jokes they are perfect for each other in the most dysfunctional way possible. They hold each other close as the sun dips below the skyline. Down on the streets, the city is a meat grinder, but up here, two battle-weary souls have finally secured their peace. Will it be smooth forever? No. You cannot erase a bloody history overnight. Fast forward 3 months, and the cinematic tone shifts to warm domesticity. Emma is wrestling with a coffee maker, praying she does not burn breakfast again. A quiet life is new to her, but she is finally learning how to live. Caleb is crushing his university classes. It proves a beautiful truth. Taking small, hopeful steps every single day builds the absolute greatest victories in our lives. Let us look at where the ashes finally settle. Caleb is looking toward his future with bright, unclouded eyes. Meanwhile, Lucian is doing the grueling, dangerous work of ripping his criminal empire apart at the roots. He fights daily to buy out ruthless syndicates, determined to go completely legitimate for her. Deep psychological trauma does not just vanish overnight, though. The dark nightmares still hunt them. Emma wakes up terrified of phantom flames, while Lucian violently jolts awake, reaching for a weapon that is no longer on the nightstand. But instead of suffering in cold isolation, they anchor each other to the present. One sunny morning, Lucian strolls into the kitchen. He gently takes the spatula from Emma, smoothly pointing out that she is incinerating the eggs. When she argues she wanted to surprise him, he jokes the real surprise is the silent smoke alarms. Real healing is implicitly finding shared laughter in the middle of a beautiful, messy life. Picture this framing. The morning sun cuts through the kitchen, catching dust motes in the air. Lucian murmurs for her to sit, his voice a low rumble. He moves with the dangerous precision of an underworld enforcer, yet here he is, simply scrambling eggs. Emma leans against the marble island, watching him. She lets out a breathless laugh, calling this peaceful reality wonderfully weird. He tilts his head, a dark eyebrow arching. Good, weird, or bad? Definitely good, she whispers. The bitter memory of scrubbing dirty floors feels a lifetimes away. Then, the gravity of the room abruptly shifts. He sets the pan aside. He looks dead at her, his dark eyes stripping away her walls, and says he wants to marry her. Emma entirely freezes. Life has a way of flipping your world upside down in a single heartbeat, and sometimes all you can do is just hold on. When he asks her to be his wife, Emma fractures. She stammers about their brief 3-month history, desperate for an escape route. But Lucian remains immovable. His devotion was forged the moment he saw her covered in blood, shielding her brother from his violent world. Emma panics, confessing they are broken creatures unfit for normal life. He reaches across the cold marble, his grip anchoring her reeling mind. He knows she views herself as unworthy of grace. He reminds her he dismantled his entire criminal syndicate for her, and he will not surrender now. She weeps, whispering he cannot guarantee that peace. He draws her in, vowing to fight the dark. The truth is, real love is never the promise of a perfectly safe harbor. It is the willingness to sail into the absolute worst storms side by side. You and I have probably felt this same hesitation, the terror of lowering your armor when the world has only taught you to expect a strike. Lucian refuses to demand an answer. He merely asks her to consider if they have suffered enough to earn a real home. Emma buries her face against him, paralyzed by the fear of ruining their sanctuary. He quietly strokes her hair, promising they will untangle their trauma as one. She looks up at this former kingpin who destroyed his own empire to protect her and agrees to think about it. The relief washing over his face is profound. They hold each other in the morning light, their breakfast forgotten, with Caleb listening nearby. Then, the violent vibration of her phone shatters the quiet, a stark reminder of reality. Peace is never a permanent destination. It is a daily, deliberate negotiation with the chaos around you. Notice the sudden shift in tension. Emma pulls out the phone, and her spine snaps rigid. Instantly, Lucian shifts his weight, his old Mafia instincts flaring to life. But the glowing screen reveals no threat. It is an email offering a full ride to New York University. Lucian grips her shoulders, his face radiating intense pride. Emma just stares, spiraling into panic, stammering that she never applied. He quietly admits he pulled strings to open the door, but the work will be hers alone. The idea of a normal routine terrifies her far more than violence ever did. But he stares right back, insisting her era of mere survival is done. You and I both know the painful truth of healing. Dodging a brutal storm is just an act of raw endurance, but building a home in the aftermath requires a totally different kind of bravery. The camera tightens on Emma's face, capturing her terror. She remains frozen, terrified that stepping into the light might sever the bloody, beautiful bond she shares with this former kingpin. But Lucian reads her eyes and shatters that doubt, promising to stand by her assent no matter the cost. Real love never demands that you shrink yourself to fit inside someone else's dark box. It gives you the oxygen to grow. Undone by this profound safety, Emma grabs his collar, pulling him into a desperate, anchoring kiss. Breaking away, she breathes heavily, asking him to repeat the question. The proposal hangs in the air, and she gives him a fearless yes. He sweeps her off her feet, spinning her in the sunlight with an uncharacteristic, boyish joy. Right on cue, Caleb rolls into the room, smiling like he knew the script all along. Caleb breaks the tension, teasing that Lucian had asked for his blessing days ago. Emma looks at these two men who have become her universe, realizing they are about to formalize what already exists. Caleb grounds her with a vital truth. They were already family. The document merely makes it harder for a cynical world to tear them apart. For the first time, Emma looks to the future and sees a promise rather than a threat. 6 months later, they stand in an unassuming Manhattan courthouse. Emma wears a simple white dress, holding wildflowers, as Caleb beams from the front row. There are no syndicate associates here, no shadows of the underworld. Just people watching two fractured souls construct a solid foundation. Blood rarely dictates true kinship. Family is simply choosing to endure the fire side by side, even when running away would be much easier. Let us step into that quiet courtroom together. We are watching them stand before a judge who seems to look straight through to their damaged souls. The judge delivers a heavy truth about marriage. It is simple to retreat when pain becomes unbearable, but the ultimate wisdom of a shared life is that true love demands you hold your ground. Emma grips his hand, her fingers tracing the violent scars of his past. Staring into his eyes, she recognizes his ghosts, but also the fierce devotion that rewrote his destiny. Her vow rings out with pure conviction, and Lucian's voice remains entirely steady. When the judge pronounces them married, Lucian draws her in, kissing her as though the surrounding city has ceased to exist. In that deep embrace, Emma finally tastes the pure joy she once believed she would never be allowed to experience. The ceremony concludes with Caleb whistling in celebration while Clara wipes away quiet tears. In that moment, something deeply fractured within Emma finally snaps back into alignment. It is a profound sense of peace. The greatest lesson of their story is that peace is not merely the absence of conflict. It is the absolute certainty that when the next storm breaks, you will not have to weather the rain alone. They share a warm meal, untainted by the shadows of Mafia threats. Watching Caleb laugh without restraint brings a deep ache of gratitude to Emma's chest. Later that evening, high above the city, Lucian lifts her over the threshold. He handles her with a gentle reverence that directly contradicts the brutal enforcer he once was. Tangled within those heavy sheets, Emma listens to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, realizing she is truly safe. Consider the striking contrast of this moment. Lucian, a man who once commanded through sheer terror, sits quietly, asking his wife what burdens her mind. Emma admits to a lingering dread, terrified that this tranquility is merely an illusion waiting to shatter. But Lucian refuses to offer empty platitudes. He speaks plainly, acknowledging that the world will inevitably fracture again, but promising they will face the chaos as a unified front. They are two broken individuals who have forged an unbreakable alliance. She kisses him, grateful for a man who looked past her defensive armor and gave her a reason to stop running. He finds equal solace in finally leaving the monster behind. True love is never about pretending the mess does not exist. It is about finding the one person willing to kneel in the wreckage and help you sweep it up. 1 year passes, bringing a resolution that feels almost poetic. Emma walks across a university graduation stage. The young girl, forced to take a life at the age of 9 to protect her brother, is now receiving a college degree. In the audience, Lucian and Caleb cheer with an unrestrained pride that completely ignores decorum. Tears stream down her face, and the emotional release is entirely justified. She survived the violent undercurrents of the criminal world and emerged into the light. Later, they celebrate in private, pouring vintage champagne. Caleb raises his glass, praising her for refusing to surrender her humanity when the darkness threatened to consume them. The lesson here is profound. Sometimes, the most significant display of power is not found in destroying your enemies, but in the quiet, painstaking work of finally building yourself up. Emma deflects the praise to Caleb, honoring the grueling physical therapy he endured. Caleb simply smiles, acknowledging that she was the compass who guided them through the longest nights. Beneath the table, Lucian grips her hand. The heavy gold of her wedding band serves as a silent anchor, grounding her in the present. Later that evening, they stand on a quiet balcony, watching the lights of the city stretch out below. We know there are countless individuals moving through those streets, fighting invisible wars of trauma that no one else sees. The labor required to heal from such deep psychological wounds is an unglamorous grind. Yet the ultimate revelation is this. When you finally reach the summit, The quiet clarity of the view makes every single brutal scar feel necessary, because they led you straight into the light. As they stand absorbing the quiet skyline, Lucian softly asks the lingering question. Does she hold any regrets about the violent chaos they survived to reach this point? Emma does not hesitate for a second. She tells him no, because they did not merely survive the suffocating grip of the Mafia. They fundamentally rewrote the rules and won. Lucian, the man who dismantled his own empire just to keep her breathing, confesses that this quiet peace entirely eclipses the thrill of criminal power. They have constructed a genuine existence from the ashes of their past. The philosophical takeaway here shifts our entire perspective on conflict. True victory is rarely defined by standing over the ruins of your enemies. Sometimes the ultimate triumph is simply finding the person who will help you carry the heavy weight of your history rather than adding to your burden. Let us strip away the romantic illusions. Fairy tales offer a flawed narrative because no magical intervention can instantly erase the profound trauma these characters endured. For over a year, Emma paced the halls of Lucian's estate like a restless ghost, caught in the crossfire of a mob war that threatened to consume them. But observe her in this present moment. Her brother is secure, the shadows have been eradicated, and she is finally drawing unburdened breaths. She has moved entirely beyond the primal instinct of survival. This leaves us with a final, grounding truth to carry forward. Genuine happiness is never a random prize you stumble upon, nor is it something you can steal from the world. It is a formidable fortress that you must construct with your own bare hands, brick by heavy brick, and then fiercely defend for the rest of your days. In our final frame, Emma leans against a bandaged Lucian. Together, they watch the sun bleed over a skyline that tried to destroy them. Tomorrow will likely bring another storm of violence, because that is the brutal nature of their world. But right now, in the quiet chill of dawn, the silence is absolute. Stick with me here, because this is what it all comes down to. A true home is never just four walls or a concrete bunker. A real home is finding that one fiercely damaged soul who looks directly at your darkest, ugliest sins and absolutely refuses to walk away. After 15 agonizing years of looking over her shoulder, Emma is finally putting the car in park. The endless, suffocating chase is officially over. For the very first time in her long life, she closes her tired eyes and she just breathes.